inside the 10. Hart tips it in, and it's he spins into the end zone for the touchdown. Watching greatness on one end in LeBron. There's a dude with 35 in white getting it done defensively and then offense taking over the fight. Mama, there goes that man.
They have shared a brilliant championship battle, but the championship can only be won by one, and it's going Dutch in 2021. Max Verstappen, for the first time ever, is champion of the world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Waterboy Experience. I am your host, the Waterboy himself, Davis McLemore, and as you can tell, I'm in a much more chipper mood than last week because finally, the Raiders have won a game. We are no longer 0-3. Were we 0-3? We were 0-2. No, yeah, we were 0-3. That's right. So we're going to call this the victory lap episode because, like I just mentioned, Raiders won a game. But also, more importantly, say it with me. Vamos, Checo! Checo Perez has won the Formula One race this weekend. What was the name of the race?
Checo Perez has won the Formula One race in Singapore, cementing himself as one of the greatest defenders of all times because he kept Charles Leclerc down, Max Verstappen had an awful season, and George Russell is a whiny cunt.
Awful weekend, you mean. And then he also kept back Lewis Hamilton.
Actually, that was Max Verstappen.
It was Max that kept back? But I thought Lewis was in third.
Lewis slipped down. Lewis suffered a lot of
Lewis didn't have a really good day either.
No, here's the interesting thing, and we're going to talk about it furthermore in the episode, but it was actually...
By the way, really quick, hold on. Let me introduce you because I forgot to introduce you, and we're just jumping right into it. This is the Red Bull chugging son of a gun, the CEO and CFO of Nye Productions, Mr. Jason Shaddix. Jason, how are you?
I'm doing really good. What about you?
As you could tell, not very good, but I'm hanging in there. But no, tell us more about the Formula One race, and then we'll jump into NFL. Or first, before that, we'll jump into any more news that you have. Go.
So before we get into Formula One, I do want to talk about some motorsport news and non-motorsport news. At the top of the news, we have to talk about the riot that happened in Indonesia after a football match in which 125 people, 123 of them being fans and civilians and all that, and 2 of them being police officers, lost their lives, like I said, during a riot.
What the heck?
I know, it's ridiculous. Over 300 people were taken to the hospital for injuries. All right, 300 people were taken there. And then it all started when the home team of Arema FC lost their first home game in over 23 years against the rivals Persebaya. I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. They lost 3.
We're not very big soccer fans, as you can tell, so we don't really know who these teams are. But I'm assuming the first team you mentioned is like really, really good.
I don't know about that. I know they're the hometown team, and these are their big rivals. This is their Chiefs to their Raiders.
Got you. Okay.
So they lost 3-2. And then the fans began to throw shit at the football players and at the officials. And then they stormed the field. And essentially they wanted to go up to management and say, why did we lose to them for the first time in over 23 years? And the police started to, police doing police stuff. And somebody thought it was a good idea to throw tear gas into the arena. Now, reports are still coming out about what happened. But some people are saying that they threw him in the arena. The riots went outside. They toppled and set ablaze a few police cruisers, and 30 people died inside the arena because essentially you throw tear gas into an enclosed area. You can't breathe. You can't see. People were running towards the exit, and then people fell over. They tripped, and then people got trampled. All right. So 30 people died in the arena. Some speculate that some children died in the arena. But like the rest of the deaths happened outside because police started hitting people with their batons, and then the people started fighting them back. And it was just this huge fucking problem. And 125 people died needlessly.
That's terrible. But like my main question is, was it a civilian that threw the tear gas?
No, that was the police, the cops.
Okay.
And the FIFA.
What the heck?
I don't know. Here's the thing. FIFA is fucking pissed because in case you don't know, FIFA is like the NFL, you know, the teams, you know, they regulate their own stuff, but the FIFA is like the international.
It's like the FIA for soccer.
Yeah, it's the FIA. Well, FIFA is like, you know, we can't control these domestic games. Okay. We can control like games that are like US versus England, so games like that, where it's a home country team. But these smaller domestic games, they don't have a control over, but they do have a lot of influence. And they've told the arenas, hey, in case there's a riot, don't use tear gas because it's not a good idea. We've seen it's not a good idea. And they did that.
Because there's only a certain number of exits that you can get into, and those exits are only big enough for a certain amount of people. So then when everybody's trying to rush out, trying to get away from the tear gas, you get people trampling over one another and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. They can't see. They can't breathe. It was horrible. Some people suffocated to death because they could not breathe. So Indonesia police is coming under a lot of fire, rightfully so. Now, I will say this, and, you know, some people may look at it as a bad way to, like, a bad thing to say this, but at the same time, I do blame some of the fans because you lost the game. Okay, you lost the game. First game in 23 years. Bound to happen. You shouldn't start throwing things at people. You shouldn't start lighting cars on fire and all that. And the thing is, for me, is there's thousands of people watching that game in the arena, and I bet you most of them were like, fuck, we lost. Or they were like, fuck, we lost. But that's it. You know, they were going to go home with the families and all that. But some idiots started riot, and you know how it goes. People just like, well, fuck it, we're doing this shit. And it led to 125 deaths.
Some people jump into it because they think it's cool. They're like, oh, great. Yeah, we're all going to fight. Yeah, this is cool. We're part of this team. We're fighting for our team. All that kind of stuff. But you got to think, like in Indonesia or all these other smaller countries and all that stuff, you know, this is their life. They follow this team so passionately. They're willing to fight for this soccer team.
We made fun of the Jacksonville Jaguars fans for getting into a fight during preseason, but
that's nothing.
Yeah, that's nothing. For all American fans who aren't into soccer, soccer is huge. It's like David said, people live day and night by soccer. One of the tales that I find hilarious, my mom's aunt, she had a son, and he was a big soccer fan for the Mexican League. And then one time his favorite team lost, and the idiot decided, you know, his team lost, so he started hitting his head on the brick wall as a way to be like, fuck. And his mom and dad got pissed, and they were like, what the fuck are you doing, you crazy, stupid bastard? And the dad said, you know, all right, I'm going to give you something worth crying about. And he took out his belt and he gave him a good ass whooping. He says, next time you do another fucking bullshit like that, I'm going to do something fucking bullshit like that. Because he's like, they're getting paid millions of dollars, well, millions of pesos to play soccer. You're not, and you buy their stuff. What are you crying about? You didn't lose jack fucking shit.
Like, I love my Raiders, but I would never bang my head against the wall for them. Sometimes I feel like it, but I don't. I wouldn't, you know, start fighting people in the arena for them. As soon as people started fighting in the arena, oh shit, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I don't care what's going on, but
because you never know if they got blades or they got guns,
right? And especially when they were in Oakland, they had that's a whole nother ball game. They used to do that in Oakland, but most of it was a lot of people said that most of it was gang related. I don't know, I wasn't there, but
it's Oakland. I really believe it was gang related.
Yeah, especially when you had Oakland versus San Francisco, Bay Area game. Oh yeah, it was over. But yeah, I would never go that far because I'm able to calm myself down and be like, you know what? It's just a game, you know, whatever. That's all right. But these fans, they're so, like in Barcelona, there's fans that have shrines in their living room for Lionel Messi. It's almost like they pray to him. Like they'll have a little bitty picture of Jesus and then a big old picture of Lionel Messi. That's how much they love and worship their favorite players or their team.
Actually, in Colombia or Argentina, I can't remember which, there's this famous player, and I can't remember his name. He passed away, I think, a year ago, and he was known for the hand of God, which is essentially in the 80s, he was playing a game, and then he stuck his hand out, and the ball hit his hand, but the officials called it, and he didn't touch it with his hand and all that. He did. He even admitted later. But people in his home country, literally, they started a religion based around him. I think he was called Maradona? No.
Maradona?
Yeah, Maradona. Something like that.
I think I've heard of him.
But they literally worshipped him like he was the second coming of Jesus Christ. Like, they built a religion around him. That's how big people are.
It's the second coming of Jesus Christ, and you know what he's going to do on this earth? He's going to play soccer. That's really...
And be a cocaine
that's
addict.
accurate. Yeah, and be addicted to cocaine.
But yeah, that's what happened in Indonesia. I feel bad for everybody that died there because, you know, they shouldn't have died for that. And I
just a game.
It is. And I blame the cops because, fuck, what the fuck did you expect that was going to happen? One thing is throwing tear gas outside an arena where there's open air and the gas can disperse. In a closed arena, even if it still had the dome open, it's still a closed arena. And what the fuck did you expect to happen? Because they threw that at the stands.
And I mean, like, your main job as either security or police officer in that arena, you should be like, okay, these people are mad, but we have to calm them down and we have to get them to leave in a, what's the word I'm looking for?
Calm out.
A calmly manner, yes. You know, kind of file out the door, all right, go home, do your thing. And, you know, if you're releasing tear gas in the parking lot because people are starting to get mad, that's one thing. Because at least they can go somewhere when they're in the parking lot. But you're putting it in the arena. That was not a smart decision at all.
Yeah, so like I said, feel bad for the people that died. Feel bad for the people that, you know, affected them and their families. For the children that were there and that were affected by it. I feel bad for them. For the people that started this and the cops, go fuck yourself. But anyway, let's move on from that depressing news to the World Rally Championship, in which, and I deeply apologizing for not knowing how to pronounce your name, but it's a Finnish name. Kalle Rovanperä is, I think, how you pronounce it. Anyway, he has become the youngest World Rally Championship driver of all time at a young age of 22 years old. He won the World Championship.
Wow. He's basically the same age as we are.
He's actually a year older than me.
Well, yeah, a year older, but
yeah, congrats to him. I watched some of the highlights. Fuck, he was good, man. He was fucking good. I've always said this. The two best drivers in motorsports are Formula One drivers and the rally drivers, because you have to have some fucking balls to do what they do, especially the rally drivers.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, that has been that news. Let's move on into Formula One, where Red Bull and Aston Martin are in a bit of trouble. In Formula One news, one of the most talked about subjects is that the FIA has reviewed all of the team's finances from last year, and it appears that Aston Martin and Red Bull may be in trouble for going over the budget. The FIA announced that a minor breach will result in a fine, a budget cap reduction for the next season, and any team having gone grossly over the budget, they can be stripped of the previous year's season standings.
Oh, shit.
Which means that if Red Bull did go greatly over the budget, then Max can be stripped of his world title, making Lewis Hamilton an 8-time world champion.
Not this way. No.
We can't seem to run away from last year in Abu Dhabi, can we?
I guess we can't. So they'll be stripped of the Constructors' Championship too, correct?
We don't know. They just said the championship. So and a lot of people are saying it's the Drivers' Championship.
You know, if that's the case, I hate to say it, but they should be stripped of the Constructors' Championship too.
I don't think they should be stripped of last year's Constructors' Championship.
No, yeah.
Because they already received the money. Because the higher you end up in the Constructors' Championship, the more money you get. So it's more painful for the teams to be stripped of the Constructors' Championship than the World Championship. Because if you're stripped out of the Constructors' Championship, that literally means that hundreds of millions of dollars that you were going to receive at the end of the year are no longer there. So literally, it could make or break a team if you do that. But
does it affect Aston Martin, though?
I'll get to it. Though the FIA hasn't announced if Aston Martin or Red Bull have gone over budget, it is being talked a lot in the paddock, with Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff saying that, quote, "All of us have been investigated diligently, and as far as we understand, there's a team in a minor breach, which is more procedural, and another team that is fundamentally massively over, that is being looked after, that's an open secret in the paddock," end quote. I'm sorry if it didn't sound right, but he's Austrian, so his English isn't always the best.
Little lost in translation.
Yes. So essentially, everybody in the paddock has known that there's two teams that breached the budget cap. One was less than 5% over the budget cap. The other one was over 5% over the budget cap. And if it is Red Bull that went 5% over the budget cap, then, like I said, they can be stripped of the points. If it's Aston Martin, then I have one question. Where the fuck did that money go? Because this year's car is fucking shit.
It was shit. They didn't use it very well. Imagine you go over the budget cap and you still can't make a winnable car.
Oh my God. I
think it was Red Bull, though, honestly.
Here's the thing, though. Christian Horner has talked about suing Mercedes and Ferrari for those comments, because he's essentially saying, well, the FIA hasn't revealed who it is. And saying those kind of comments, they actually make the stock of our company, like, not literal stock, but they make us look bad, and that affects our sponsors. That affects, a lot of people. So he's thinking, well, if you keep on saying that, I may sue. And Christian also said that he believes they're not over budget for last season. So it's going to be an interesting thing. We should get a answer to that question on Wednesday, and we're recording on a Tuesday. But I may pop in and say, hey, we finally got a result of this, a verdict. Turns out this team and this team did go over budget or something like that. So we should expect news tomorrow, and I'll add it later in post-production. So the FIA has said that they will not be releasing a verdict this week. Instead, they will be releasing it next week. In other news, F1 and the British broadcast company Sky Sports have come to a rights agreement that will see Sky Sports be the sole broadcaster of Formula One races until 2029 in the UK and other parts of the world. Unfortunately, it means that Formula One will be locked behind a, quite as many fans say, expensive subscription service due to the way the agreement is. Only Sky Sports will have access to Formula One to stream it. And even Formula One's own app of Formula One Pro TV isn't even allowed in those countries.
So would you still be able to stream it on ESPN here?
Sky Sports doesn't have a standing in America. So for America, it's F1 Pro TV and ESPN. And honestly, F1 knows how big the American market can be. And having F1 Pro TV and ESPN is actually good, because with F1 Pro TV, that money goes directly to Formula One. And there's a lot of people that watch it on the app rather than on ESPN because...
Don't you?
Yeah, that's what I do, because last year they were actually streaming the races on ESPN Plus. This year they haven't been. So, I'm guessing, a lot of people are like, well, screw that. I want to watch it on my phone, or I want to watch it on my smart TV. I don't have cable or satellite. Anyway, that was my news. There was many other things in the world of motorsport, but we do have a NFL week to go over and a race. So I'm going to skip ahead, and I am going to talk about a little bit about free practice. All right, so essentially, Singapore is one of the hardest races for the drivers because it's so humid in Singapore that on a normal race weekend, a driver loses about 10 pounds of body weight, or like water weight. In Singapore, they can lose maybe 12 to 15 pounds of water weight.
Jeez.
So it's very taxing on them. And if you see like the post-race interview, they're drenched in sweat. And usually the drivers are sweaty after a race, but this time it's like they can't dry off. They're like sweating profusely. Yeah, like a dog. And it's really taxing. And like this is 23 corners of constantly turning with short straights. Like this is taxing on their bodies, on their reflex. It's one of the races where you're really like, I have to be in the best shape possible. I have to, my senses have to be keen and all that stuff. So,
and the car has to have great handling. It's not just about speed in this race since it's such short straights.
Yes, which is why, funny enough, the Red Bull was doing quite good against the Ferrari.
Well, and maybe the Red Bull is just an all-around great car. Now, we've seen races where, Max has mostly won races where there's just these long straights, or there's one really good straight where he can just pass everybody because that is the fastest car on the grid in the straights, correct?
Yes.
Right. But I think the reason why Checo won, he's good in the turns, and he's good at defending in the turns, and I think that ultimately is what allowed him to get up there. When it's not just a drag race, Checo is one of the best.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the things. During practice, here's an interesting thing. During practice, so many of the drivers were going off. They were hitting the barricades. They were skidding along. It was like everybody was like trying to figure out this track. Some of the drivers haven't been there in 3 years. Some of the drivers have never been there. And it was an interesting practice. Actually, Pierre Gasly's airbox, which is situated right behind his head, caught on fire. And the Aston Martin mechanics had to extinguish it. But yeah, that was a bit of a scary event. And during qualifying, Max Verstappen actually ran out of fuel. Well, was going to run out of fuel and had to abort his final lap. And he was actually going to get pole position because he was doing really good in the first and second sector. But at the third sector, like coming towards the straights, they told him box. And he was like, what the fuck, man? What the fuck are you guys doing? So he was really pissed about that. Charles Leclerc took pole position and Checo Perez was P2. Now, one of the reasons why I mentioned you how surprising that Red Bull was compared to the Ferraris is that the Ferraris have throughout the season shown to be better in the corners. In this race, they weren't that great. I think Red Bull have figured out that problem right there.
Did they make any upgrades to the car, Ferrari, this week?
Ferrari and all Ferrari engine cars. So Ferrari, Haas, Alfa Romeo. I want to say Mercedes. I think that's it. None of them brought any upgrades to Singapore.
Okay. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's got something to do with the fact that they didn't have any upgrades. Maybe that's why they weren't as good in the turns this week.
Maybe, but it's also so hard to tell with this street track.
Plus that Ferrari car is just inconsistent.
It is. So let's start with the race review. It's going to be really quick because honestly, it wasn't a great race, but it wasn't a bad race. It's like an in-betweener.
It was a race that we were happy with the outcome, but not a whole lot happened in it, correct?
Yes. All right, so for the race itself, it was actually delayed by an hour and 10 minutes because it was raining and they didn't want to put the drivers out there, even though they have wet races and they're supposed to be the best racers in the world. The FIA, the steward said, now let's wait. So an hour and 10 minutes later, they did the whole grid procedure and everything, and then they started racing. Going into turn one, Checo actually got ahead of Leclerc. And Leclerc couldn't catch up to him. He tried really hard, but he couldn't. Max actually stalled at the beginning of the race. So if you remember Lando Norris back in Italy, and his car was on the grid, and like the lights go green, and his car was like, that's what happened. The anti-stall system kicked in, and he just lost so many places. And he ended up fighting Kevin Magnussen for a position, which I don't know why Kevin was fighting Max Verstappen when, let's be honest, Max is incredibly fast. That Haas is a boat. And Kevin Magnussen got damage to his front wing, causing an orange and black flag to come out, and he had to pit. That ruined his race. Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton actually had a bit of contact into turn one. So Lewis went wide. And Alex Albon, who's back from his appendix surgery and his being intubated and all that, he actually spun out in turn 7 and hit the rear of the car into the barricades. He managed to keep the car driving, and he kept on driving for a few more laps, and then he ended up hitting again the barricade at turn 7, I want to say, again. And he had to retire the car. Safety cars came out. Essentially, there was 2 full safety cars, 3 virtual safety cars, 6 drivers got out of the race. Nicholas Latifi ran into the side of Zhou Guanyu going into a turn. Like, he says, I didn't see him, but he was right next to him. Like, seriously, dude.
How did you not see it?
Exactly. It's a red and white car. How do you not see him? Ran him into the side, ruined Zhou's race. So that was disappointing. Lewis Hamilton made a mistake, and he actually came up hitting turn 7 into the barricade, and he got his wing stuck. And then he limped back to the pits and all that. And then like a lap and a half later, Yuki Tsunoda hits the barricade, and his car, it destroyed the front of his car. Again, turn 7. Everybody had already pitted by that point. And then the safety car came out, and the only team that hadn't pitted at all was McLaren, and they pit, and they got a free pit stop. So they actually did really good. And from there, like after the safety car ended and the race restarted, Checo got in trouble because he stayed behind the safety car too far back, and he got a 5-second penalty. Luckily, he had a 7.6 second lead over Charles Leclerc, so he ended up still winning the race, thank God. Max Verstappen, and I want to say this, he has been great all year, barely made any mistakes, but
he had an opportunity to win the world championship this week.
And everything just went wrong for him. One of the biggest things that happened after the race restarted when Yuki Tsunoda hit, he's going after Lando Norris, who's in P4, all right? He's going after Lando, going into turn 7. He goes side by side. He gets into the wet patch, hits the brakes, locks up, and he nearly hits the barricade in turn 7. And Max had to go back and pit and these were like 3 or 4 laps old tires. And he had to pit again because he flat spotted them. When you flat spot a tire is you lock up the brakes so the wheels stay in the same position and you just rub all the rubber off the tire. And you get to see the wires and all that and you lose grip. So he had to pit again, came out almost last, and he worked his way up. George Russell was a bit of a whiny cunt. Slammed into the side of Mick Schumacher, blamed Schumi. Even the announcer said, yeah, George, that's your fucking fault.
He's sounding more and more like Lewis Hamilton.
Exactly. So from there, pretty much the race went and Charles tried to catch up to Checo. He couldn't. Checo won. Charles and Sainz came second and third. And here's an interesting thing. Both Alpine cars failed to finish the race. Both the cars died with engine issues. And here's the thing. Fernando Alonso, he was ahead of Max Verstappen, and Max could not get past Fernando. Like, literally, Fernando would block him so beautifully. Like, you're
Why? Why? Like, why was this such a bad week for Max?
I have no idea, but Fernando did a wonderful job, and the only reason Max got ahead of him, literally the only reason, was because his engine died. But yeah, that was the Singapore Grand Prix. I'm sorry that I did it really quickly, but we are running late. We ended up talking longer than I expected on the soccer match, and we still have the NFL week to report. But this coming week is the race in Japan, which I'm going to have to be up at midnight to watch it. But here's the thing. Maybe Max can clinch the world championship in this race. And if he does, it's a Honda win.
Honda come back for Formula One?
I've heard rumors.
They're thinking about it. You know, representatives from Honda or the bigwigs in Honda are going to be there at that race watching.
It's still their engine. It might be called...
Still their engine? They're right up the road?
Exactly. And it might be called Red Bull powertrains, but that's through and through. That's a Honda engine right there. So we don't know what's going to happen, but hopefully Max gets a better weekend. I would really love for Max to win the world championship in the U.S. because I don't have to be up at midnight to watch that. But yeah, that was Formula One. Now let's talk about the NFL, and boy, was it a bad week for us again.
There were certainly some upsets here. We're going to start off with the Thursday night football game on September 29th. The Dolphins took on the Bengals. Now, there's a lot of drama surrounding this game, and a lot of people, Bog might be like, why didn't the Finns win this one? What the heck?
Actually, did you talk to Bog about it?
I actually, recently, I haven't.
Because I know the issue with watching that game for Bog was that it was going to be like 1 a.m. for him.
Oh, that's right. It was a night game. So, well, that's interesting. But we want to talk really quickly about Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. He suffered a concussion. He's really suffered a concussion in this game. But a lot of people say that he suffered the concussion last week. And we talked about last week, he took a big shot and he was a little slow to get up. And finally he got up and he starts jogging a little bit. And then he just folds and falls on the ground. And the team doctor, the NFL doctor, checked him out. And he said, well, he's good to go. And put him back in the game. And they ended up winning that game. But this game, he took another big hit. And he was out for a while. Didn't they have to carry him out of there?
Yeah, he was taken on the cart.
So, yeah.
It's a big controversy right now because the NFL Players Association actually fired the doctor who did the exam on Tua. Because
As they should.
As they should. And everybody's wondering, well, what kind of exam did he do? Because Tua came back to the game quite quickly, if we're going to be honest.
Too quickly. He should have sat out for a while. Oh, yeah, there's pictures of them getting the stretcher out and taking him and all that stuff. So, yeah, it was not pretty at all.
The ESPN article that I was reading earlier said they didn't know if he had a concussion back in the previous week, but he did get the concussion this time around. I think it was a minor concussion, but either way, Tua is not going to play for week 5 and more than likely not week 6 if they're going to be cautious about this.
As they should. So overall, quarterback Teddy Bridgewater came in for Tua. He was 14 for 23, 193 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. And his best wide receiver was probably Tyreek Hill, 10 receptions for 160 yards and averaged 16 yards per pass. And Chris Edmonds was 2 for 14, one of those receptions being a touchdown. Whereas on the Bengals side of the ball, they played pretty good here. Joe Burrow was back to his old self, going 20 for 31 for 287 yards and 2 touchdowns. Joe Mixon ran the ball for 24 carries with just 61 yards, but he did have a touchdown in this game. And T. Higgins had 7 receptions for 124 yards and 1 touchdown. Great performance from the Bengals, being able to bounce back here. And
let me say this. Where was that performance week 1, week 2, and week 3, by the way?
Well, we can't put this win solely on the Bengals. I'm saying we have to, take into consideration if Tua would have played that entire game and he was perfectly fine, I think the Dolphins would have won this game. So I think Tua going out gave the Bengals the opportunity to win this game.
Remember to what I said at the beginning of the season. The Dolphins will be great as long as Tua can stay healthy.
And here we are.
Fortunately, my prediction was right. I wish I was right the other times when I predict stuff, but you lost this game. You betted on the Dolphins beating the Bengals.
I did. I thought Tua was fine, but apparently not. But with Teddy Bridgewater in the game, the Dolphins were not really good on third down. They were 2 for 10, whereas the Bengals were 8 for 15. Penalties, this was a relatively ugly game. They had 6 penalties apiece. And so, yeah, overall, the Bengals won this game 27-15. Any last thoughts?
I hope Tua gets better.
Oh, yeah. The Vikings beat the Saints 28-25. Not much happened there. I'm not going to talk much about it because I want to go ahead and move on to this next game. What a game for the Detroit Lions and the Seattle Seahawks. Geno Smith, the Seahawks quarterback, was 23 for 30, 320 yards and 2 touchdowns. On the other side of the ball, Jared Goff was 26 for 39, 378 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And, this was a slugfest, and this was a really big fight here. Third down efficiency, the Lions could have done a little bit better. They were 4 for 10. The Seahawks did not punt the ball at all, but their penalties were absolutely terrible. They were 11 penalties for 76 yards, and they actually weren't sacked at all this game either, but the Lions punted the ball twice, lost an interception, and lost a fumble. One good thing I will say is they were 3 for 3 on going for it on 4th down. So this was a really good game. It was a really entertaining game. Defenses didn't really show up, but it was 48-45 Seahawks win. What did you think about this game? It was a heartbreaker.
It was a heartbreaker, but what I'm noticing is we tend to have a lot of players go into either injury mode or they're on the watch list for injuries, and I think that's hurting us a lot.
22 points in the 4th quarter for Detroit. That's good. They were this close.
Still, man. I'm not happy with the loss. I'll be honest. I'm not happy. I really want us to do better. Like, I have faith in the Lions. We are getting better, but we can't just be having like, oh, we're almost there. No, like we have to get there. We have to get that win. And
defense really needed to show up a lot better in this game, dropping 48 points here. They tried to keep up, but and turnovers were another big thing for the Lions because they had probably one too many turnovers, and that cost them the game. So 48-45 Seahawks over the Lions. So Zach Wilson is back at quarterback. I'm not sure when he came back at quarterback, but He was 18 for 36, 252 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions versus Kenny Pickett's 10 for 13, 120 yards, and 3 interceptions. He's struggling, I know, but give him time and give him experience, and he'll grow into the shoes that he's in right now. Jets punted the ball 5 times. That's, they still won, but, it's unacceptable. Kenny Pickett's 3 interceptions, plus Mitchell Trubisky's 1 interception, totaled 4 interceptions for the Steelers. And that was basically it. The Jets won 24-20 against a struggling Steelers team, and they're still trying to figure things out. And Zach Wilson didn't do terrible at all. Your thoughts?
I told you the New York Jets were going to win. You said I was a bit of a fool for choosing them because the Steelers were pretty good. But I told you that defense lacking. But I do want to bring attention to something that happened during the game. And it was a football fan named Dalton Keene, 27. He fell from an escalator inside the stadium in Pittsburgh. And unfortunately, he passed away.
No, I didn't hear about this.
Yeah, I was looking up if Joe Flacco was playing this game before you started talking about the game, or if it was Zach Wilson. And then, that's the first thing that popped up when I put New York Jets. So that happened. We feel bad for the family. And
that's terrible.
We don't the NFL is investigating what's happening, and so are the police. Apparently in July, there was a similar accident where a man did fall from an escalator. So people, if you're going to those games, watch out for those escalators.
That's in the Steelers stadium. So, maybe they need to fix some things up. But no, that's terrible. The Giants beat the Bears, the other New York team, 20-12. Titans beat the Colts 24-17. Chargers beat the Texans in what was a much closer game than it should have been, 34-24. Browns lost to the Falcons, and Cordero Patterson will be out the rest of the season with an ACL injury, I believe it is.
Man, the Falcons can't catch a break, can they?
No, they can't, but they were able to squeak away with a win here. Cowboys beat the Commanders. Who cares? Eagles beat the Jaguars in what was a actually pretty good game. I'm going to look at the stats for this one. Trevor Lawrence was 11 for 23, 174 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception, but they mostly focused on the run game here with Travis Etienne and Josh Robinson. On the other side of the ball, Jalen Hurts did what Jalen Hurts does. He was 16 for 25, 204 yards, 1 interception, and he scored a rushing touchdown, and Miles Sanders also scored 2 rushing touchdowns. He had 27 carries for 134 yards. And, this was, you look at the stat lines, it looks like it was all Eagles, but you cannot put down the strength of that Jacksonville defense. Total yards, 401 yards versus Jacksonville's 219 yards, and 210 total rushing yards for the Eagles. Overall, it was a 29-21 win for Philadelphia.
Jacksonville's been on run lately, but the Eagles, Jesus fucking Christ. I think they're a team everybody slept on because we weren't talking about them before the season started.
We weren't. And it's Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. That offense is stacked. And as of right now, they are the only undefeated team in the league.
And next week, they're playing the Cardinals. So which bird is going to win? I've got money on the Eagles. Because they look good.
Eagles is a much bigger bird than a cardinal, so maybe the Eagles. But now we're going to come to what was, it had us on our toes for a minute, but then we were like, okay, we're calm now.
I was sweating the entire game.
Bills versus the Ravens. At one point, it was 3-14. This was in the first quarter. It was 3-14, and the Bills were losing to the Ravens. But they came back in the third quarter, and they were able to squeak out a win here. Josh Allen was 19 for 36, 213 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and he also had 1 rushing touchdown, and he was 11 carries for 70 yards. And Stephon Diggs was 4 for 62, and on the other side of the ball, Lamar Jackson was 20 for 29, 144 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. I think those 2 interceptions really decided what happened in this game here, and ultimately it came down to the Bills beating the Ravens 23-20 in what was a pretty good game here. Both really good teams, and both could easily be the winners of their division. So, yeah. Bills 23, Ravens 20. Cardinals beat the Panthers 26-16. Packers beat the Patriots 24-27. This did not have the same feel to it that it did just a few years ago. When it used to be the Packers versus the Patriots, when Tom Brady was on the Patriots, it used to feel like a big game. You're like, yes, but it was just kind of.
Well, that's because it was Aaron Rodgers versus Tom Brady. That's literally why.
Right, yeah. And now, it doesn't feel the same, but it was still a close game, and it ended in overtime with the Packers going over the Patriots 27-24. Chiefs versus the Buccaneers, the Super Bowl replay. I'm pretty mad about this one because if you'll remember last week, I picked the Buccaneers to beat the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes was 23 for 37, 249 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception, with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 19 carries, 92 yards, and 1 touchdown. On the other side of the ball, Tom Brady was 39 for 52, 385 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And Rashad White was 3 carries for only 6 yards and 1 touchdown. And Leonard Fournette was 3 carries for -3 yards and 0 touchdowns. As you can tell, they didn't really focus on the run game here. The passing game, however, was great, led by Mike Evans with 8 receptions, 103 yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. So, passing-wise, the Buccaneers threw the ball all over the Chiefs, but they could not get that run game going because they only carried the ball once. Well, not once. They only had 3 yards, and that was the rushing touchdown. Other than that, they could not get anything else started, and it ultimately led to a Chiefs victory over the Buccaneers.
And a lot of people are now saying that Patrick Mahomes has now officially beaten Tom Brady, even though it's a regular season game and Tom Brady whooped his ass for a Super Bowl.
Catch me outside. We'll figure out. The Rams and the 49ers.
What the fuck?
What the heck happened? Matthew Stafford was 32 for 48, 254 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 1 interception. He didn't do terrible, but he needed to have more touchdowns under that belt. They didn't run the ball very well at all. Cam Akers was 8 for 13. Cooper Kupp was 14 for 122 yards. And this was just a matter of not turning field goals into touchdowns. You get in the red zone, you need to score a touchdown. But they were unable to do that here. Jimmy Garoppolo was 16 for 27, 239 yards with 1 touchdown. And that's basically the whole story. Touchdowns versus field goals led to the Rams losing 9-24 to the 49ers. Now, this is the game that I've been wanting to talk about all day, all week. Broncos versus the Raiders. Russell Wilson cooked better than he did, but he still can't really cook. He was 17 for 25, 237 yards for 2 touchdowns, and actually led the team in rushing. He was 4 for 29 yards and 1 touchdown. The Raiders on the other side of the ball, 21 for 34, was Derek Carr, 188 yards. Josh Jacobs probably had a career game here, and this game alone could save his spot on the team. It was 28 carries for 144 yards and 2 touchdowns. Devontae Adams did Devontae Adams things. He was 9 for 101 yards. Mac Hollins was only 3 for 33. And Darren Waller was actually pretty disappointing in this game. He was only 3 receptions for 24 yards. But ultimately, we were able to get it done on the ground. Our rushing game looked fantastic here, led by Josh Jacobs, and we were able to come away with a 32-23 win. It wasn't pretty. It was not the best looking win. We were not perfect by a long shot, and we still got a long way to go because next week we're playing the Chiefs in Arrowhead on Monday Night Football in primetime. But it was certainly a little morale booster here for the Raiders. I will say this. If we have any hope of beating the Chiefs, the main thing we have to do, we cannot just kick field goals all game. We have to score touchdowns in the red zone. Every time we get in the red zone, we have to score a touchdown. Now, I'm acting like we're going to beat the Chiefs. We might not. There's a good chance that we are not. But I'm saying if there is any chance, any shot in the dark of us pulling it off, that's what we would have to do. Just execute. And if we can run the ball as good as we did here, that's fine. Don't throw it at all if you don't have to. But Josh Jacobs, great job. That's how you establish yourself as one of the better running backs in the league. But he needs to keep having those games like that. So 32-23 win over the Broncos. We got Chiefs next. Your thoughts?
It's the Broncos. Honestly, the Broncos aren't good this season.
They're not. But still feels good.
No, it doesn't.
And let's also point out the facts that the Lions and the Raiders both have the same record now. So the Seahawks are not good, and you lost to the Seahawks.
Look,
I've got you there.
The difference between the Lions and the Raiders is our fan base didn't open their big fat fucking mouths like the Raiders did and say, we might go all the way.
They do their own. People in Detroit don't talk as nearly as much shit as people in Las Vegas. But if I were you and you were me, it would be the other way around.
We were literally saying, well, we hope we get to be better than last year and we get to be in the midfield team. We didn't at no point expect to be winning games consistent basis and be one of the top teams in our league. No, we didn't think that. We were just going to be like, well, as long as we're out from the bottom, we're going to be good and we're going to be improving. The Raiders, on the other hand, how much money has been spent on players? How much money was spent on that fucking stadium? And all to win against the Broncos, but still go 0-3 for a long time.
Well, now we're 1-3 and we don't have to worry about it. But I don't know.
Don't get our hopes up.
No. Right. My confidence in this team is still really low. But, it's a step. It's just a little baby step in the right direction. So that's what I'm saying.
You guys are getting your ass whipped next week. Honestly, just give the local morgue your coffin sizes because the Chiefs are going to kill you guys. You said, well, if we have any chance at all, like, no, you do not have a chance at all. I'm not saying this just to piss you off because you don't like Patrick Mahomes, but overall, the Chiefs are an absolute better game. We complained about Patrick Mahomes. We complained about him doing his trick shots. But for fuck's sake, they didn't disappoint like the Raiders do.
Are you ready to move on to predictions?
I'm not done ranting.
You're not done ranting on who?
On the Raiders.
Oh, why are you not done ranting on the Raiders?
I don't know. Well, I'm done anyway.
Yeah, no, you're done. Okay. Since you had a better record last week, you get to have the first pick.
Yes, I ended up being ahead by 2 games. I won 4 games. I lost 2 games, which the 2 games that I lost were Broncos versus Raiders. I went Broncos. And then the other one was the Lions beating the Seahawks, which I lost. But the other ones I won, so. For my first pick, I am going to choose the Buccaneers beating the Falcons because I want an easy win.
Solid pick. I think for my first pick, for my first game, I'm going to pick the Bills beating the Steelers.
Another easy pick for you.
I'm going to play it safe this week. I need wins.
All right, next game, and it's going to be an interesting one. It's going to be the Miami Dolphins versus the New York Jets. Now, Tua's not going to play, all right? You still got Tyreek Hill, all right? And you still have Waddle, all right? So it's not going to be an easy win, and I may lose this one.
Bold pick.
I am going the New York Jets.
There you go. Yeah, that's better.
Let's be honest. I've been doing really great with New York the last few weeks, so let's keep the ball rolling. Let's keep this train going. Let's go, New York, even though your city sucks.
Well, I think I'm going to pick the Vikings over not the Cincinnati Bears, the Chicago Bears. They're riding off of a win against the Saints. Vikings are kind of rolling, and Justin Jefferson is unstoppable. So,
for my next pick, I am going to go old bird out, and I am going to go the Eagles beating the Cardinals. Another easy victory, but I like the Eagles, and they've been doing really good to me.
They've been good to me. All right, I'm going to go with the Ravens over the Bengals. I actually think this is going to be a really good game, and I'm going to pick this one close one because I have to reach one time. But I think the Ravens are going to beat the Bengals in Sunday Night Football.
Nice pick. Honestly, it's an easy win for me because Ravens. Well, easy win for me to pick who's going to win because it's going to be the Ravens. But I'm going to go for another pick, and I am going to go for the Rams beating out the Cowboys.
That's not ridiculous. That's not ridiculous to say that. No,
Yeah, it's an easy pick.
Cooper Rush is doing pretty good as the Cowboys' backup quarterback with Dak Prescott out, but, still, it's the Rams. Maybe they won't be as disappointing as they were this week. We can only hope, because lightning doesn't strike twice in the same spot. I believe I'm going to pick the Titans beating the Washington Commanders. Derrick Henry can just run all over them, and that's what I think is going to happen here.
Commanders just suck in general.
Commanders just suck.
For my next pick, I am going to go for a fan favorite of Davis, one person he loves more than anybody else, Patrick Mahomes beating the Raiders.
All right, we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see. We'll just see. I'm going to pick another AFC West team going over the Browns, the Chargers beating the Cleveland Browns.
Again, this week, there's not really a lot of good games except for
once you get into the primetime games, they're a little bit better. So,
all right, for my next game, I am going to choose. Honestly, let me ask you, for my final pick, should I stick with the Lions? Should I go one more time and see if we can beat the Patriots?
No, I think you need to go somewhere else.
All right, then it's decided. Lions beating the Patriots.
No. Come on. That's a reach.
So was the 49ers beating the Rams, but you saw what happened last night.
I mean, yeah, but look, they just came off of a really close game against the Packers.
I have spoken.
All righty. Well, we're going to go the 49ers beating the Carolina Panthers. That's what I'm going to do.
All right, well, that was our picks. Hopefully, we'll do better this week than we did last week.
I feel like I'm definitely going to do a lot better. I think, how many games did we pick in total?
6 games.
6 games. I think I'm at least going to go 5-1. I think that's the best that I'm going to do.
Maybe. For me, honestly, I'm going to do pretty good. I think I'm going to do okay. I'm not going to do bad. I'm not going to do good, but I'm going to do pretty okay.
You're not going to do bad, you're not going to do good, but you're also not going to do bad, but you're also not going to do good.
But I'm still going to be ahead of you.
You're going to be good, but you're not also going to be bad. You're still going to be ahead of me. But if I win 5 games this week,
that would put you at least 3 games ahead of me.
Yes, because we're only separated by 2 games.
13-11.
It's 13-11 right now?
Yeah, we've been losing a lot lately.
Yeah, the week before was a really bad week. I think both of us only got 1 right.
1 or 2. We tied regardless.
Yeah.
You had the worst week, though.
This week?
The previous week.
Oh, the previous week? I was 1 and 5.
I think you were ahead of me, though.
That's right. Yeah, we were still tied. And then, because remember, after that week, we were like, well, we're still tied.
Oh, yeah. Well, regardless, we're not really good at this.
Yeah, we're still figuring it out. Upsets have just been kind of happening randomly, and I'm just like, there's no way. There's no way. But anyway, any more NFL stuff? Anything else we have to mention?
Nope. That's pretty much it. So take us home, white boy.
Thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Waterboy Experience. We appreciate your listen, and we want to remind you that you can follow us on Instagram at the Waterboy Pod or on Twitter at the Waterboy EXP. The Waterboy YouTube channel, the official Waterboy YouTube channel, is coming soon. It's in the works as we speak, among other podcasting projects. And I think that's it. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Waterboy Experience, and peace.
Second and goal just outside the 10.